Roll of thunder, hear my cry. Mildred D. Taylor. Chapter 4, Part 1. Cassie, what's the matter with you, girl? Big Ma asked as she thrust 3 sticks of dried pine into the stove to rekindle the dying morning fire. You sure are taking a sorrowful long time to churn that butter. Nothing, I muttered. Nothing? Big Ma turned and looked directly at me. You've been moping around here for the past week like you get the whooping cough, flu, and measles all put together. I sighed deeply and continued to churn. Big Ma reached out and felt my forehead, then my cheeks. Frowning, she pulled her hand away as Mama entered the kitchen. Mary, feel this child's face, she said. She seem warm to you? Mama cupped my face in her thin hands. You feel sick, Cassie? No. How do you feel? All right, I said, still churning. Mama studied me with the same disturbed look Big Ma wore, and a tiny frown appeared on her brow. Cassie? She said softly, fixing her dark eyes upon me. Is there something you want to tell me? I was on the verge of blurting out the awful truth about the bus and the men and the night, but then I remembered the pact that Stacy made us all swear to when I had told him, Christopher, John, and Little Man about the caravan, I said. Instead, no ma'am, and began to churn again. Abruptly, Mama took hold of the churning stick, her eyes searching mine. As she studied me, she seemed about to ask me something. Then the question faded, and she pulled away, lifted the lid of the churn. It looks ready now, she said, with a sigh. Dip out the butter like I showed you and wash it down. I'll take care of the milk. I scooped the butter from the churning lid onto a plate and went through a curtain to the small pantry off the high shelf under several other dishes, and I had to stand on a stool to get. As I eased out, Mama and Big Mouth spoke softly in worried tones on the other side of the curtain. Something the matter with that child, Mary? She's not sick, Mama. There's all sorts of sicknesses. She ain't ate right for going on over a week. She ain't sleeping right neither. Restless and murmuring and asleep all night long. And she won't even hardly even go out and play, rather being here helping us. Now you know that ain't like that child. There was a moment's pause. Then Mama whispered, so I could hardly hear. You think, Mama? You think she could have seen? Oh, no, Lord, child, Big Ma exclaimed hastily. I checked in there right after they passed, and she was sound asleep. She couldn't have seen them old devils. The boys neither. Mama sighed. The boys, they're not themselves either. All of them, they just too quiet. Here it is, Saturday morning, and they're quiet as church mouse. I don't like it, and I can't shake the feeling it's got something to do with Cassie. Without warning, I lost my balance, and with an absurd topple from the knee-high stool, crashed upon the floor with the molding dish. Cassie, you hurt? Mama asked, stooping by me. No, I fumbled, feeling very clumsy and close to tears. I knew that if I let the tears fall, Mama's suspicion that something was wrong would be confirmed, for I never cried about such a silly thing as a fall. In fact, I seldom ever cried. So instead of crying, I jumped up quickly and began to pick up the broken pieces of the dish. I'm sorry, Mama, I said. Oh, that's all right, she said, helping me. When we had swept the chips away with the long field straw broom, she told me, leave the butter, Cassie, and go on with the boys. But, Mama, I'll do the butter. Now go on, do like I say. I stared up at Mama, wondering if she would ever know what we had done. Then joined the boys who were sitting listlessly around the fire, absently listening to TJ. See, fellows, there's a system to getting out of work, TJ was expounding as I sat down. Just don't be around when it's got to be done. Only thing is, you can't let your folks know that's what you're doing. See, you should do like me. Like this morning when Mama went to bring them scissors she borrowed from Miss Logan, I up some volunteers so she don't have to make this long trip down here. She been so busy and all. And naturally, when I got out here, y'all wanted me to stay a while and talk to y'all. So what could I do? I couldn't be impolite, could I? And by the time I finally convinced y'all I gotta go, all the work will be done at home. TJ chuckled with satisfaction. Yeah, you just have to use that old brain. That's all. He was quiet a moment, expecting some comment in his discourse, but no one said a word. TJ's eyes roamed the length of the room. Then he admonished. See, if you were smart like me, Stacy, you use the old brain to get the questions on that big test coming up. Just think, they probably just sitting right here in this very room, waiting to be discovered. Stacy cast TJ an annoyed look, but did not speak. Y'all sure are a sorry lot this morning, TJ observed. A fellow just wasting you know, his know-how talking to y'all. Ain't nobody asked you to give it, said Stacy. Well, you don't have to get all snippety about it, replied TJ haughtily. Again, silence prevailed. But that would not do for TJ. Say, how about we sneak down to that old Wallace store and learn how to do them new dances? Mama told us not to go down there, Stacy said. You somebody's mama boy or something? You got to do everything your mama tells? You gone if you wanna, said Stacy quietly, not rising to TJ's bait, but we staying right here. Again, silence. Then TJ said, say y'all hear the latest about them Nightmen? Suddenly all eyes turned from the fire and riveted themselves upon him. Our faces were eager question marks. We were totally in TJ's power. What about him? Stacy asked, almost evenly. TJ, of course, intended to nurse the moment for as long as he could. You see, when a fellow's as smart as me, he gets to know things that other folks don't. Now, this kind of information ain't for the ears of little kids, so I really shouldn't even tell y'all. Then don't, said Stacy with smooth finality, turning back toward the fire, as if he cared not at all about the night man. Taking one cue, I nudged Christopher John, and Christopher John nudged Little Man, and the three of us forced ourselves to stare at the fire and feign disinterest. Without a captive audience, TJ had to reinterest us by getting to the point. Well, about a week ago, they rode down to Mr. Sam Tatum's place. You know, down the Jackson Road toward Strawberry. You know what they done? Stacy, Little Man, and I kept our eyes upon the fire, but Christopher John piped eagerly. What? I poked Christopher John, and he turned guiltily around. But TJ, triumphant with an assured audience of one, settled back in his chair, ready to prolong the suspense. You know Mama'd kill me if she knowed I was telling this. I heard her and Miss Claire Thompson talking about it. They was real scared. Don't know why, though. Them old Nightmen sure wouldn't scare me none. Like I told Clyde. Hey, y'all, Stacy said, standing up and motioning us up. Mama said she wanted us to take some milk and butter down to Miss Jackson before noon. We'd better get started. I nodded, and Christopher John, Little Man, and I got up. Tarred and feathered 'em, TJ announced hastily. Poured the blackest tar they could find all over him, then plastered him with chicken feathers. TJ laughed. Can you imagine that? But why? Asked Little Man, forgetting our ploy. This time, TJ did not slow down. I don't know if y'all's little ears should hear this, but it seems he called Mr. John Lee Barnett a liar. He's the man who runs the mercantile down in Strawberry. Mr. Tatum's supposed to done told him he ain't ordered up all the things Mr. Barnett done charged him for. Mr. Barnett said he had all them things. Mr. Tatum ordered writ down and told Mr. Tatum. And when Mr. Tatum asked to see the list of his, Mr. Barnett says, you calling me a liar, boy? And Mr. Tatum says, yes, sir. I guess I is. That done it. Then it wasn't 'cause of the bus, Christopher John blurted out. Bus? What's a bus got to do with it? Nothing, said Stacy quickly. Nothing at all. Well, if anybody said them Nightmen was down here because of some stupid bus, they crazy, said TJ authoritatively. Cause my information come direct from Miss Claire Thompson, who seen Mr. Tatum herself. You sure? Stacy asked. Sure? Sure, I'm sure. When do I ever say anything I ain't sure? Stacy smiled with relief. Come on, let's go get the milk. All of us went into the kitchen, then to the bedrooms to get our coats. When we got outside, TJ remembered that he had left his cap by the fire and ran back to retrieve it. As soon as we were alone, Little Man asked, Stacy, you really think them Nightmen put tar and feathers all over Mr. Tatum? I suppose so, said Stacy. Little Man frowned, but it was Christopher John who spoke whisperingly shrilly, as if a stray morning ghost might overhear. If they ever found out about that bus, you think they gonna put tar and feathers all over us? Little Man's frown deepened, and he observed gravely. If they did, we'd never get clean again. Casey, said Christopher John, his eyes wide. Was you real scared when you seen him? Little Man shivered with excitement. I wish I could have seen him. Well, I don't, declared Christopher John. In fact, I wish I never heard of no nightmare, or buses, or secrets, or holes in the road. And with that outburst, he stuffed his pudgy hands into his thin jacket, pressed his lips firmly together, and refused to say another word. After a few moments, Stacy said, What's keeping TJ? The rest of us shrugged, then followed Stacy back up the porch into Mama's room. As we entered, TJ jumped. He was standing on the desk with Mama's Web Du Bois, the Negro, in his hand. W.E.B. Du Bois, the Negro, in his hands. That don't look like your cat, said Stacy. Oh, man, I ain't done nothing. Just looking at Miss Logan's history book, that's all. I'm mighty interested in that place called Egypt she been telling us about. And them black kings that was ruling back then. Still talking, he casually put the book down and picked up his cap. All four of us looked accusingly at TJ, and he halted. Say what it is. Say, what is this? What's the meaning of sneaking up on me like this anyways? Y'all think I was looking for them test questions or something? Shoot, a fellow think you didn't trust him. Then thrusting his arm around Stacy's shoulders, he chided. Friends gotta trust each other, Stacy, 'cause ain't nothing like a true friend. And with those words of wisdom, he left the room, leaving us to wonder how he had managed to slink out of this one. The Monday after his arrival, Mr. Morrison had moved into the deserted tenant shack that stood in the south pasture. It was a sorry mess, that house. Its doors hung sadly from a broken hinge. Its porch floorboards were rotted, and its run-room interior was densely occupied by rats, spiders, and other field creatures. But Mr. Morrison was a quiet man, almost shy. And although Mama had offered him lodging in their house, he preferred that old shack. Mama sensed that Mr. Morrison was a private person, and she did not object to the move. But she did send the boys and me to the house to help him clean it. Little Man, Christopher John, and I took to Mr. Morrison immediately, and he had no objections to the cleaning. Anybody who was a friend of Papa was all right in our book. Besides, when he was near, nightmen and burnings and midnight tarrings faded into a hazy distance. But Stacy remained aloof and had little to do with him. After the cleaning, I asked Mama if Christopher John, Little Man, and I could go visit Mr. Morrison, but she said no. But Mama, I want to know more about him, I explained. I just want to know how come he's so big. You know, about as much as you need to know, she decided. And as long as Mr. Morrison stays here, that's his house. And if he wants you down there, he'll ask you. Don't know how come y'all want to go down there no ways, Stacy said moodily when Mom was out of hearing. 'Cause we like him. That's why, I answered, tired of his distant attitude toward Mr. Morrison. Then, as discreetly as I could, I said, "What's the matter with you, boy, not liking Mr. Morrison?" Stacy shrugged. "I like him all right." "Don't act that way." Stacy looked away from me. "Don't need him here. All that work he doing, I could have done myself." "Ah, you couldn't done no such a thing. Besides," I looked around to be certain that Big Ma and Mama were not near. "Besides, Papa don't just bring him here to do no work. You know how come he really here." Stacy turned to me haughtily. I could have taken care of that too." I rolled my eyes at him, but I held my peace. I ain't feel like a fight. And as long as Mr. Morrison was within hollering distance of the back porch, it made little difference to me what Stacy thought he could do. "I sure wouldn't want that big old man staying in my place," said TJ on the way to school. "I bet you he'd get mad one time. He'd take little man and swing him over the tree yonder like he wasn't nothing but a twig." He laughed. Then his little man set his lips and stared angrily up. "Course I could probably about do that myself." "You couldn't either," denied little man. "Hush, man," said Stacy. "TJ, leave man alone. I ain't bothering him. Little man's my buddy. Ain't you, man?" Little man scowled, but didn't reply. TJ turned back to Stacy. "You ready for that history test?" "I hope so," said Stacy. "But I keep forgetting them dates." "Betcha I could help you if you be nice." "How? You worse than I am about dates." TJ grinned, then slyly pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket and handed it to Stacy. Stacy unfolded it, looking at it curiously, then frowned. "You planning on cheating?" "Well, no, I ain't planning on it," said TJ seriously. "Just if I gotta." "Well, you ain't gonna," said Stacy, staring the paper in two. "Hey, what's the matter with you, man?" cried TJ, grabbing for the paper. But Stacy turned his back to him and tore the paper into bits, then deposited them into the gully. "Man, that show ain't right. I wouldn't do you that way." "Maybe not," replied Stacy. "But at least this way you won't get into no trouble." TJ mumbled. "If fella ain't trouble, then I don't know what is." Little man, Christopher John, Clyde, and I were sitting on the bottom step of the 7th grade class building after school waiting for Stacy and TJ when the front door banged open and TJ shot out and tore across the yard. "What's the matter with him?" asked Christopher John. "Ain't he gonna wait for Stacy?" The rest of the 7th grade, led by little Willie Wiggins and Mo Turner, spilled from the building. "There he go!" cried little Willie as TJ disappeared on the forest road. Mo Turner yelled, "Let's see where he going." Then he and 3 of the boys dashed away in pursuit of TJ. But the others stood restlessly near the steps as if school had not yet ended. "Hey, what's going on?" I asked little Willie. "What's everybody waiting around for?" "And where's Stacy?" demanded little man. Little Willie smiled. "Stacy's inside with Miss Logan. He got whipped today." "Whipped?" I cried. "Why, can't nobody whip Stacy." "Who done it?" "Your mama," laughed little Willie. "Mama?" Christopher John, little man, and I exclaimed. Little Willie nodded. "Yup, she did it in front of everybody." I swallowed hard, feeling sorry for my older brother. It was bad enough to be whipped in front of 30 others by a teacher, but to get it done by one's own mother, now that's downright embarrassing. Why'd Mama do that? Asked Christopher John. She caught him with cheat notes during the history examination. Mama knows Stacy wouldn't cheat, I declared. Little Willie shrugged. Well, whether she knowed it or not, she sure enough whipped him. Of course, now she give him a chance to get out of it when he said he wasn't cheating, and she asked him how he got them cheat notes. But Stacy wouldn't tell on old TJ, and you know good and well old TJ wasn't about to say them notes was his. Cheat notes? But how'd TJ get cheat notes? Stacy got rid of them things this morning. Come noontime, though, replied Little Will. TJ was in them woods busy writing himself another set. Me and Mo seen him. Well, what the devil was Stacy doing with him? Well, he was in the middle of the examination, and old TJ slipped him these cheat notes. Me and Clarence here was sitting right behind him, and TJ and seen the whole thing. Stacy was sitting right side of TJ, and when he seen them notes, he motioned TJ to put them away. At first, TJ wouldn't do it, but then he seen Miss Logan start toward him and slip Stacy the notes. Well, Stacy didn't see Miss Logan coming when he took the notes, and by the time he saw her, it was too late to get rid of them. Wasn't nothing Miss Logan could do but whip him. Failed him, too. And old TJ just sat there and ain't said a word, interjected Clarence, laughing. But knowing Stacy, I bet you old TJ ain't gonna get away with it, chuckled Little Willie. And TJ know it too. That's why he lit out of here like he done. And I betcha, hey Stacy! Everyone turned as Stacy bounded down the steps. His square face was unsmiling, but there was no anger in his voice when he asked quietly, anyone seen TJ? And all the students answered at once, indicating that TJ had headed west toward home, then surrounded Stacy as he started across the line. Christopher John, Little Man, Claude, and I followed. When we reached the crossroads, Mo Turner was waiting. TJ went down to the Wallace store, he announced. Stacy stopped, and so did everyone else. Stacy stared past Jefferson Davis, then back down the road toward Great Faith. Looking over his shoulder, he found me and ordered, Cassie, you and Christopher John the man, y'all go home. You come too, I said, afraid of where he was going. Got something to take care of first, he said, walking away. Mama gonna take care of you, I hollered after him. You know she said we wasn't to go down there, and she find out she gonna wear you out again. Papa too. But Stacy did not come back. For a moment, Little Man, Christopher John, Clyde, and I stood watching Stacy, and the others heading swiftly northward. Then Little Man said, I want to see what he gonna do. I don't, declared Christopher John. Come on, I said, starting after Stacy with Little Man and Clyde beside me. I don't want no whipping, objected Christopher John, standing alone in the crossroads. But when he saw that we were not coming back, he puffed to join us, grumbling all the while. The Wallace store stood almost a half mile behind Jefferson Davis on a triangular lot that faced the Soldiers Bridge crossroads. Once the Granger Plantation store, it had been run by the Wallaces for as long as I could remember, and most of the people within a 40-mile stretch between Smellings Creek and Strawberry shopped there. The other three corners of the crossroad were forest land, black and dense. The store consisted of a small building with a gas pump in front and a storage house in back. Beyond the store, against the forest edge, were two gray clapboard houses and a small garden. But there were no fields. The Wallaces did not farm. Stacy and the other students were standing in the doorway of the store when Little Man, Christopher John, and I ran up. We squeezed through so we could see inside. A man we all knew was Caleb Wallace stood behind the corner. A few other men sat around the stove playing checkers. And Jeremy's older brothers, R.W. and Melvin, who had dropped out of school long ago, learned leaned sleepy-eyed against the counter, staring at us. "Y'all gone to the back," said Caleb Wallace. "Listen, y'all want to buy something? Mr. Dewberry got the music going already." As we turned away from the entrance, Melvin Sims said, "Just look at all them little niggers come to dance." And the laughter of the men filled the room. "We can't leave Stacy." Christopher John tugged at my arm. "I don't like this place, Cassie. Let's go home." "We can't leave Stacy," I said. Music beckoned from the storage room where the Dewberry Wallace was placing round brown bottles on a small table as we crowded in. Aside from the table, there was no furniture in the room. Boxes lined the walls, and center floor had been cleared for dancing. Several older couples from Great Faith were already engaged in movements I had never seen before. "What they doing?" asked Little Man. I shrugged. "I guess that's what they call dancing." "There you go!" Someone shouted at the back of the storeroom slammed. Someone shouted as the back door of the storeroom slammed shut. TJ was fleeing straight toward Soldiers Road. Stacy tore across the Wallace yard and leaped high like a forest fox, fell upon TJ, knocking him down. The two boys rolled toward the road, each trying to keep each other's back pinned to the ground. But then, Stacy, who was stronger, gained the advantage, and TJ, finding that he could not budge him, cried, "Hey, wait a minute, man! Let me explain." Stacy did not let him finish. Jumping up, he pulled TJ up and hit him squarely in the face. TJ staggered back, holding his eyes as if he were badly hurt, and Stacy momentarily let down his guard. At that moment, TJ rammed into Stacy, forcing the fight to the ground again. Little Man, Christopher John, and I, with the others, circled the fighters, chanting loudly as they rolled back and forth, punching at each other. All of us were so engrossed in the battle that no one saw a mule wagon halt on the road and a giant man step out. It wasn't until I realized that the shouting had stopped behind us and that the girls and the boys beside me were falling back that I looked up. Mr. Morrison towered above us. He did not look at me or Christopher John or Little Man, although I knew he had seen us, but walked straight to the fighters and lifted a still swinging Stacy off TJ. After a long, tense moment, he said to Stacy, "You and your sister and your brothers get on this wagon now." We walked through the now silent crowd. Caleb and Dewberry Wallace standing on the front porch of the store with the Simses stared at Mr. Morrison as we passed. But Mr. Morrison looked through them as if they were not there. Stacy sat in front of the wagon with Mr. Morrison, and the rest of us climbed to the back. "Now we're gonna get it," shuddered Christopher John. "I told y'all we should have gone home."